Hi and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our Symantec webinar today. So we've got David Barnett here from Symantec who will be going through the webinar with you. So just before I pass over to David, I'm just going to go through a few housekeeping details with you. So you are muted throughout the webinar, but we'll hold a Q&A session at the end. So if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, there is a questions box just at the right hand side of your screen. So if you just type your questions in there, we will answer those at the end of the webinar. We're also recording the webinar today, so I'll send you all a link to the recording this afternoon. And there's a really short 3-question feedback form at the end. So if you would like any further information, just request that in there and one of our specialists will get back to you. Okay, so I'm now going to pass you over to David.
Excellent. And thank you to everybody who's taken the time out of a busy diary to join us today. My name's Dave Barnett. I look after our CASB business for the UK, Ireland, and also Israel, funnily enough. I joined Symantec through the Bluecoat acquisition. Bluecoat bought a CASB solution prior to being bought by Symantec. It was a product called Elastica. So you may well hear or see the words Elastica, CASB, or CloudSock. They're actually all the same thing. It's a bunch of code sitting in an AWS data center in Dublin that does a whole bunch of clever stuff around cloud. So it stands for Cloud Access Security Broker. The technology's been around for about, well, it's been about 4 years now, since 2013. And it's starting to mature to a point when companies are starting to adopt CASB as an essential part of their cloud strategy. So I propose to take you through some slides. We'll also do a live demo of the service, and then we're going to do a Q&A probably around about 11, if that's okay. So please do submit your questions, or we can open the lines up at the end. So what does a CASB do? Essentially, it does two security-related things and one business-related thing. So first of all, it can help you uncover where your users are going. What cloud applications are they putting your company sensitive data into, and what volumes of data? It can also help you control that as well. So not just to see where people are putting data, but actually to decrypt that data, analyze it, and perform an action on it. And that could be driven by a feeling in the business that you want to get shadow IT into control, or something along the lines of GDPR. Perhaps you might be concerned that a cloud file sharing site, for example, is a data processor in the wild. We've done a lot of work to map over shadow IT with GDPR controls as well. The other 50% of customers who might be using a CASB will be using it to control the data that people are putting into sanctioned and unsanctioned cloud applications. For example, you might be considering rolling out Office 365. Office 365 has some great security features within it, but it also requires the end user to fill in some gaps as well, and CASB can fill in that gap. And we're going to talk in some depth around that. So those are the two security-related things. Now, there is a third related thing that's kind of to do with shadow IT. So here's the thing, right? The old way of running IT used to be the IT director and her or his subordinates would cascade down some really interesting ideas that the business might want to use. Roll out a new server or new desktop, or let's start using mobile devices. What we tend to find now is a lot of innovation comes from the bottom up. So people are starting to find cloud applications and mobile applications that could be of use to them in their business. And then word gets around the business and it spreads. So what the CASB can do is identify where in your business people are using things that might be useful for others. So say, for example, something like Intralinks, the cloud application that runs digital data rooms. If marketing is using that, find out where and who, and see whether or not you can buy a corporate license for the rest of the business. And by the way, if you can inspect that traffic, you can make sure there's nothing sensitive going in there. So to identify where innovation is coming from within the business is a good idea. So Gartner, this is all a page of Gartner guidance, and actually strategic planning assumptions from some very detailed documents. So you're welcome to go out and buy these documents, or here is the summary. So essentially, what Gartner started out by saying was that the big risk around data leaking from SaaS applications is going to be because of the users. Users are being given too much power to put sensitive data into OneDrive, for example, and to create links that could be downloaded by anybody, circumventing two-factor authentication. They're also saying that there's been a lot of interest in CASB, but growth of it is accelerating. But right now, we'd estimate in the UK around about 15 to 20% of customers have a CASB or CASB type controls in place. Then they start to talk about Office 365, and it's very interesting that what Gartner is saying is that in line with the shared security responsibility model that a lot of organizations are facing with the cloud, where Microsoft is responsible for physical security of their data centers, they're responsible for virtual, so IDS and IPS of their data centers, but they're not responsible for customer data, and they're not responsible for customer identity accessing that data. So what they're saying is that by 2018, 40% of Office 365 deployments are going to have a CASB or CASB-like controls protecting customer data. And we are seeing evidence of customers that have bought Office 365, and one customer that comes to mind has bought 7,000 Office 365 licenses 2 years ago and had still not deployed because of security considerations around, for example, people putting sensitive data into OneDrive and sharing it widely. So so we're seeing security being a blocker, and a CASB can deal with that. So it's a good insurance policy. And what Gartner is now saying is that 60% of enterprises that implement cloud visibility and controlling tools, i.e. CASB, will experience 1/3 fewer security failures. So it's very possible now to go to finance organizations, finance functions within a business and say, we're rolling out, making a big strategic investment in Office 365. Gartner is advising us that there's an insurance policy here in this technology area. What we've seen very much in the last year is narrowing down of the value points around CASB into specific use cases. And we've done a lot of work to map these out, and we would love to sit down with you guys and talk through any of these that might matter for you. So for example, the business use case of ability to identify and control personal cloud application accounts in use within the customer's environment. So that's a good example of, if you were to roll out Office 365, if you were to allow login.microsoft.com access for business purposes, you're also allowing access to personal Microsoft Office 365. And we're seeing a lot of customers who, we run a shadow IT assessment, and they say, well, we've got 1,000 licenses of Office 365. We found 1,500 licenses of Office 365 active, and it's because people are starting to sync their folders so that they can work from home. Largely not because they're bad actors, but they just don't know. It's their fault. It's just they don't know that it's against the rules. CASB can deal with that. Anyway, so that's an area that we're very strong in, is helping our customers, guiding our customers down proven business use cases. So there are 3 things that a CASB should really do, and this is guidance driven from the analysts. Well, first one is having visibility of shadow IT. Is it a cloud application that's well run and it conforms to a lot of standards that matter? Is it 27,001 data center? Or is it, for example, in the case of Zing Drive here, not picking on Zing Drive, is it a very insecure cloud application? So we've done research on many tens of thousands of cloud applications, and we understand hundreds of things about those cloud applications. And they matter when you're selecting a cloud application that needs to be secure and look after your data. We need to look at the data itself. So we have a very strong DLP called Content IQ, a very extensive DLP system within our CASB. And we can also connect to Symantec's DLP system if you have Symantec Enterprise DLP as well. And then protection against malicious action. So part of that, yes, is anti-malware, and we have anti-malware within our service, and we can act as a single control point for that, but also looking at the behavior of the users. So we have a very sophisticated user behavior analytic area within the technology. It's designed, the whole thing about Elastica, before it was acquired by Bluecoat, was it was really focusing on the data science, analyzing user behavior really to the nth degree. So this is actually part of an MIT sort of development proposal thing back in 2013, when the guys focused really into what would normal behavior be like, and what should we do if that normal behavior is breached. So we can focus in on things like high risk leavers or high risk users. Say, for example, a temporary worker that comes in, works on an HR database for a couple of days, focusing on what the normal behavior would be. Is the normal behavior that they would access personal file sharing sites at 3 a.m. in the morning and upload large amounts of data? Probably not. So we can focus in on that, and anonymously as well, so we don't breach any words council problems. on the basis of that analysis, and that analysis was done last year, Forrester Wave document has actually put us as one of the leaders, as you can see. Now, there is no Gartner Magic Quadrant yet. We're expecting it sometime around about now. But this is the only definitive major analyst report on CASB. So they put us as a, I mean, I don't say that they're putting us as, but we're best of breed technology. Yeah, essentially, it's a good product. But since then, Symantec had bought Bluecoat, and our technology around CASB cannot sit on its own. So we will always integrate with third-party products. We always integrate with Checkpoint firewalls and Palo Alto and Fortinet and so on and so forth. We'll always integrate with identity, Microsoft Identity, SAML Identity, and Okta and Ping, OneLogin, and so on and so forth. We'll always integrate with third-party SIMs and so and things like that. But how about if we can use the fact that we have code on both sides for things like SEP? How about we can make SEP better by using CASB? How about we can make our VIP user authentication better by using CASB? So this is a big focus for us. It's what we call, well, the marketing people call CASB 2.0. And it's all around, if you are an existing customer of SEP, we will use that SEP manager to be able to feed the CASB audit without actually having to add any extra agents to the desktop. It's saying, look, if you've got VIP user authentication, we will add extra functions to our CASB to enable you to be extra secure. So with VIP exclusively, of course, we work with other single sign-on providers, but exclusively with VIP, you can make risk-based step-up authentication decisions. So if, for example, a sensitive file has been put into OneDrive, fine, it's been encrypted in OneDrive. But if that file's been accessed from 3 different locations on the same account at the same time, that would be anomalous. So we could then ask that user to present their VIP credential. So, we're allowing extra functions. Encryption, we've just launched ICE for information-centric encryption for Office 365, OneDrive, and Box. And what that allows you to do is just put a sensitive document into OneDrive to analyze whether it's sensitive or not, and if so, then encrypt it with a cloud-based PGP encryption system. And then if you wanted to share that document, it will only ever appear as an encrypted HTML page. So you could send, I could send it outside of the business, and that person could only access it if they're correctly authenticated using a VIP app that they can download for free from the App Store. So it's a way to extend out control, irrespective of the cloud application. We started off with OneDrive and Box, but we're going to be expanding that internally and also externally as well to other cloud applications. We also have 2 integrations that I really want to focus in a little bit on. One is around Bluecoat Proxy SG and the web security service, and also our Symantec DLP. So let's just flip through these animations because the Americans love animations. There we go. So if you have the shadow IT audit function of CASB, and if you have the Bluecoat Intelligence System feed, which is an anti-malware feed, we can add into that feed all of the 25,000 cloud applications that we understand and all the risk metrics around them. So we can feed them in real time onto the Proxy SG technology and also web security service technology. So you can make a risk-based decision whether or not you'd like people to access that. So, for example, we understand which cloud applications are susceptible to cloud vulnerability, so data in motion. So you could say, don't allow anyone to put any data from within our company into a cloud application that they've discovered that is susceptible to cloud bleed. Or you could say, look, we understand which cloud applications are definitely not GDPR compliant because we know that they don't encrypt data at rest or that they mine the data that's been put in there for advertising targeting purposes. So you could say, don't allow anybody within our organization to put any data from within the organization into a non-GDPR compliant file sharing site, for example. So it's not just about saying we found somebody doing some shadow IT stuff. It's about saying we've blocked it, or we caution the user that if they were to want to proceed, that they're breaching the rules and their administrator will be notified. So that's actually a very powerful integration. The second one is, whilst we have a very good DLP system within our CASB, I'm going to do a little quick demo in a minute to show you how good that is. Really good. We can also, for customers that already have Symantec DLP, we have 3 integrations that really matter. They're all around creating one single unified view of data within your organization. So the first integration is the DLP Cloud Connector that sits right next to the CASB. So instead of what our competitors would do is they'll take a document from OneDrive and they'll bring it back inside your organization and they'll scan it using your Symantec DLP. What we do is we take a document from OneDrive and we put it into a cloud connector. It's lightning fast. It doesn't involve any data going back inside your organization. It's very, very quick, and it can have direct integration with the cloud application itself. So if it's OneDrive or Box or Dropbox or Salesforce, whatever it happens to be, we can do a pop-up notification branded to your corporate colors to say this has been blocked because it contravenes the standard definition of data. Second integration is we can feed incidents and samples of data back into your on-premise Symantec DLP. So we don't store any data within our CASB, but we can say within your on-premise DLP, where you might store evidence of credit card details that have been found, we're feeding it back into the DLP. New with DLP 15 is the fact that you can push policies, you can define policies within the Symantec DLP environment and push those policies out into the CASB. So you can essentially, just control the CASB from within the DLP system. That means that if you've made a significant investment in Symantec DLP, then you can extend that investment out. Now, to say again, we have a DLP that's free of charge within the CASB, but if you have Symantec DLP, we have a great story for you. There we go. One of these American slides that they love to put together. Okay, so we have, what we're saying is we have a single pane of glass to give you a view of malware protection, the data, web security, email security, user authentication, etc., etc. So the cloud security portfolio essentially does what you would normally do within your organization. The CASB audit does a risk assessment. So you would normally assess your machines for are they patched correctly? Do they have antivirus on them? Well, we can assess cloud application for is it the sort of cloud application that you would want file sharing to happen within the organization. We can do that by integrating with whatever third-party tools you have. But if you have Symantec's Proxy SGP or Web Security Service, there's APIs and it's a lot slicker. We have, you would normally look at, are there any intruders accessing your data within your organization? Is there any malware? And that's really a function of the security, which are APIs into the back end of sanctioned cloud applications. And we support 10 SaaS applications and 2 IaaS applications. So if you're considering rolling out Microsoft Azure or AWS, then we can monitor the behavior of the administrators within there and identify, for example, if they're creating large S3 buckets in AWS, for example, that could potentially contain data. So anyway, so that's the API. We also have a forward proxy approach, which is the CASB gateway. So we can forward all traffic for, say, for example, Office 365 through us, and we can determine, is it personal, does it work, what's the nature of the data within there, should it be allowed, should it be encrypted, should it be blocked, and what action should we take after that. Have a strong DLP system in there. Now we have incident response. We have integrations with third-party products. We have full forensic audit within the service, so we can determine exactly not just the breaches that people have done, but all actions that they've done, and we can tokenize and anonymize their names so that we're not able to focus in on any individuals, and a data protection officer could reveal that personal information. So we're going to go on to a quick demo, if that's okay with you guys. But I just wanted to suggest that if this is something of interest to you, maybe have a conversation with your account manager at Bytes, and we can perform 2 assessments if that would help you, understand the value of this technology and articulate the value of this technology. The first one is shadow IT risk assessment. So we could take log files from your gateway devices, your secure web gateways or firewalls, whatever is seeing the last hop to the internet, and we can take a week's worth of that, and we can produce a shadow IT assessment to show you which file sharing sites, which collaboration, which email your users are putting data into. Or we can produce a shadow data risk assessment, so we can hook up to your sanctioned cloud applications such as OneDrive, or Google Suite or G Suite or whatever, and then we can look at the data. So we could run DLP policies against data that's stored in OneDrive, see whether or not it's personal or a credit card, that sort of thing. And where is that data shared? Is it shared internally with everybody? Is it shared externally with third parties, so david.barner@gmail.com, for example? Or is it shared with a public link that anyone can download? I could do that on a month's worth of data. So at this point, I'm just going to flip over to a demo, if that would be okay with you guys. So you should be able to see. Right, okay. So this is the CASB system itself. On the left-hand side are options that you can enable through the store. So it's all licensed as a service. When you purchase a module, different areas get lit up. Of course, it's a demo system, so it's got everything lit up. This is a live demo, so normal things. If it breaks, I'm really sorry, but it shouldn't do. So if all you do is buy the audit module for shadow IT assessment, then this audit section here would be enabled along with the dashboard as well. So you'll be able to look at things like within the dashboard, you'll be able to look at things like GDPR compliance. So which non-GDPR compliant cloud applications are my users going to? And you can build your own dashboards, or you can add existing ones that are quite pre-built, for example. So we're trying to do much of the work as we possibly can for you. I'm going to focus in on the audit function for about 5-10 minutes, and I'm going to focus in then on the cloud application control. So within audit, we can produce a summary of what cloud applications your users are going to do, what the relative risk of these are, and it's a real cliche, but CASB really is a journey. You start off with it producing a load of interesting stuff, and then you want to focus down on stuff that matters to you and your business. So, for example, in the last 7 days here, we've assessed that the top used services by the users are Google, their sanctioned applications like YouTube and Google, so we can filter those out if necessary. But LinkedIn is unsanctioned. So we can see the top used services, the top risky services, and the top services that your users are using that were compromised in the last 90 days. And hey, there's good old Experian. And if you're in the security industry and you haven't yet realised what Experian's up there, possibly just have a look at LinkedIn. It's all over LinkedIn. But sorry, I just want to get back to that second one. Sorry. Compromised in the last 90 days. Sorry, just thinking there for a minute. So with respect to Experian, sorry, when you see the little blue line, it means it's processing. Only one user has been onto Experian. And just when live demos go very slowly. I'm just going to check that I've got That's not great. That's not great. Okay. So I might have a little bit of a internet challenge here, in which case I'm going to. No, it seems to be rebuilding. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to fire up my personal hotspot if my home internet is not going to support me. Because, yeah, it seems to be just chugging along a little bit slowly. I'm awfully sorry about the delay. Personal hotspot. Going to get it running anyway, just as a backup. Okay, so we look at the compromise. So here's the point, right? You have a responsibility not only to your users, but also, for their health, cyber health, but also the fact that somebody might have reused their password for Experian within their corporate account. So it's not just for let's just help our users. We need to say, look, there's been a public breach. People are mingling work and personal quite often in terms of passwords and the way they behave. So let's assess the problem and, if appropriate, send out messages to our users asking them to, reset the passwords, for example, would be a good one. We can create infographics if the executives walk around. So we've still got last branding or something. Or we can create very nice audit reports that will go through in a whole ton of depth about where the users are going, what new services you've found. You can run these reports, of course, on a very regular basis. Just loading it right now. So it'll say things like, what are the top file sharing applications or collaboration applications if our users put data into? So what customers tend to do is, I mentioned it's kind of like a journey. There's a walking phase, and then there's a running phase, and then a crawling, walking, and running phase. So in the crawling phase, you're really just looking at, what's actually out there. What are people actually doing? What does good look like for my business? And most customers that we come to, and they say, well, actually, we think we've got a shadow IT problem. Most of them think, well, we've probably got, I don't know, 50 cloud applications in use. When we show them that, there's 177 services within this organization which has got 25 users, something like that, people realize that it's actually a tip of an iceberg. But some of these services don't really matter. So 700 users. Some of these services don't matter. So categories like video hosting, it could be of arbitrary interest to you. But stuff like social networks or file sharing or collaboration tools could be of interest to you. So, for example, from a security point of view, file sharing, there's 4 file sharing applications being used by the users here. And so 1 meg of data went up to iCoordinator. We don't know what iCoordinator is. Yeah, it could be anything. So you might want to say, is that good for the business? You might reach out to the user and say, is it something that you're relying on? And if it's really good for the users, well, why not put them through the process of acquiring licenses so the business can use them on a wider scale? And if you want to add controls, maybe you could put that data through our CASB so we can inspect it. So it's all a matter of getting a clear picture of what's going on within your organization, understanding what good looks like, and then narrowing out the stuff that really doesn't matter, and focusing on how you can adopt cloud applications better within your organization. So list of users. We make recommendations at the bottom. So I'm just going to scroll down really quickly. Make recommendations, consider adopting popular SaaS applications that are more business ready. So I mentioned that we have a database within the CASB of our cloud applications. So for example, you may be considering Box, okay? So you might consider that Box would be a cloud application that our business would be useful for a business. And then all of a sudden, someone comes on and says, actually, what about Ignite? Ignite would be one that we would consider rolling out for online file sharing. But then along comes I don't know, maybe the chief executive or the chief financial officer goes, why are we paying all this money for Box potentially or Ignite? We can get a free Zendera storage, right? Zendera storage looks really good and it's free for a month or a year. So as a security professional, you can perform a side-by-side comparison based on security stuff that matters. So identity, how it handles password quality rules, the user audit trail, the stability of the organization. We've done all this research around the compliance of Zendera storage against the compliance of Box. And you can make a quick analysis and say, look, we have 2 here that are clearly appropriate for the business, and we have 1 here which isn't. And you can justify your cloud investment in that way from a security point of view. So that's good stuff that could be done with CASB audit. The other area we have is cloud application control. So if we look at the API view, so we have 2 ways of controlling cloud applications with the CASB. We can use an API into sanctioned cloud applications, and in this case, this example is with Google Apps, but the interface is identical for Microsoft. And we also have a forward proxy approach for unsanctioned and sanctioned cloud applications in real time. So the benefits of the API is you can go back in time, and the benefits of the forward proxy is you can block stuff before it leaves the organization. So we can offer a shadow IT assessment, shadow data assessment to our customers, where we can hook into your sanctioned OneDrive, and we can say, let's look at the last month of data. Let's look at where documents are being shared from OneDrive between our users and anybody who's got the link. And we've seen some horror stories. External exposure, so where Dave.Barnett has been added as a collaborator instead of David_Barnett at Symantec.com. And where there are documents that are shared that may be sensitive, that are shared with the entire organization. And it might well be the case that a marketing document is fine to be shared within OneDrive with everybody. but a list of people's salaries might not be. We can also look at, where clouds are connected to other clouds, and maybe risky cloud applications have been connected, but we'd really focus on the data. So what we can do is we can say, within Google Drive, in this case, show me personally identifiable information. Let's show me where the users have been showing that. And so this one here, for example, is a document that's been put into OneDrive, and it's got PII, and it's got Graham H. Billy data. If you're the administrator, you could see the file if you've got the rights to log in. I don't know whether or not I've got the rights to see that. As I mentioned, we don't store the data. We store a link to the data, which is what you're seeing there. We can see the exposures there. It's just going to take a second to load up. It's a terrible internet connection I have. Yeah. So you can see the exposures when it loads. And then you could do something about it. So you could say, look, I can see that there's a lot of files here that have been saved on here. We're going to manually go in. So yeah, so look, we're going to manually prevent the rights from sharing and preventing download, copy, and print. And perhaps we can remove external collaborators. But here's the thing, right? You might not want to do that manually. You might want to procure the product to do it automatically. So we can do it two ways. We can do it from instance that we've seen. So within the Investigate tab, down at the bottom, the internet's going really, really slowly. So I don't know how this is going to come out. I don't know if this recording is going to be edited, but thank you for your time. I'm just going to about another couple of minutes and we'll open it up for questions. So within the Investigate tab, all activities are recorded within the Investigate tab. I'm just going to shape it up to say a week. So let's get a week's worth of data in there. Okay, so a week's worth of data. We're going to look at the critical issues. So critical stuff. I'm going to leave that there, and then we're going to go down. So this, for example, this event that happened here. So remember crawling, walking. So crawling is watching. Then all of a sudden you're going to see stuff that contravenes data guidelines. So this one here, for example, has matched PII and GLBA, and it's this user here, email one. It's on Google Drive. Now, what we can do is you can create a policy from that event. So you can start to walk. You can start to say, actually, I'm damn sure that that's a sensitive document. When very high degree of likelihood that that's sensitive document. G Drive PII. So you got G Drive PII. And so the whole idea is that we're trying to make this easy to do. So we can say, look, for the cloud service, Google Apps or Office 365, I've got that enabled actually on here. For Google Drive, we're going to, if it's external, public, or unexposed, and take off unexposed. Anybody. So not just for that one user, but we're going to say anyone, or perhaps groups. So you might have, for example, a highly sensitive group within your organization of people that may be leaving the organization. You might put leavers into a leavers group. So you might want to just apply certain policies to them. Anyway, that's not really the case in this case. File shared with anybody. File names, well, people change file names, so that's no guide. Content IQ profiles. So this is where we can start to introduce the DLP. So PCI, company confidential, encrypted file. We don't like people sharing those. Check for malware. And then what we're going to do. So if we find that data, we're going to remove the shared link, prevent people from downloading it, update the collaborators role, etc., etc. And then we can do a whole ton of other stuff that are kind of, if you want to go through it in depth, then we really encourage you to speak to your account manager. Stuff around the users, monitoring and controlling the user's behavior, integrating with third-party single sign-on providers to knock people off, or integrating with Cisco, integrating with SIMs, that sort of thing. So I hope this has been a useful session for you. Amy, if you're on the line, can we maybe open up to Q&A if anybody's posted any questions?
Okay, thanks, David. So yeah, as mentioned, if you do have any questions, you can just pop those in the questions box, which is just at the right-hand side of your screen. So we'll just wait a couple of minutes to see if any come through.
Great, thank you very much indeed.
Okay, so there's a question here. Does this product do endpoint DLP for desktops and laptops, as well as the cloud DLP?
The product itself does not do endpoint DLP because it's focused really at the cloud. But if you were to deploy Symantec's endpoint DLP, then we could sync the data definitions between the two. So we have a single view of data wherever it's residing. I think Symantec's, I'm not a Symantec DLP expert, but I think they work on the endpoints and storage on the network, and so on and so forth. But by connecting the two with the cloud connector means that you can have a unified view. So you could say, this is a special design document for our business. If we find it on the endpoints, or if we find it in OneDrive, perform certain actions. And those certain actions can be driven by the DLP system rather than the CASB. So you might have a process for notifying HR if people are starting to put data onto movable USB sticks. And the same could apply if people are putting the same data onto OneDrive and trying to create a file share that people could download. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, we'll just wait to see if there are any more questions.
Everyone's being shy on Tuesday morning. I mean, look, this is a very exciting space. We'd always encourage discussion and dialogue with our customers and prospective customers. So if anybody has any questions that they want to discuss one-to-one with their account manager, or possibly get me or some of our other technical specialists online, we would be delighted to have those discussions, really. But it's a technology space that is not yet something that everybody's got in their plan. So it's a journey to realise that if you're going to deploy Office 365, for example, there are certain things that Office 365 do, and there are certain things that the customer still needs to do. So my suggestion is, if you're considering using OneDrive, to consider the benefits that could potentially be gained by using Symantec's DLP, Symantec's CASB, excuse me. And we don't charge for having discussions.
Okay, thanks so much, David. I think that's all the questions we have today. So thanks, David, for presenting today, and thanks so much to everyone for joining the webinar. If you do have any questions that you'd like to submit outside of the webinar, there's an email address just on the screen there, tellmemore@bytes.co.uk. As mentioned at the beginning, I'll send you all a link to the recording this afternoon. And also, if you'd like any more information, there's a feedback form at the end, so you can request that in there. Okay, so thanks everyone, and thanks for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Bye.